You ever walk into a room you built and have someone tell you that you don't belong there? Nolan Pierce had not even reached the front desk when he heard the voice. "Excuse me, sir. Excuse me." The tone was not a question. It was a warning dressed as one. He stopped near the marble pillar at the entrance of the Hargrove Grand, his carry-on rolling to a halt beside him. The lobby was the kind of place designed to make people feel small and grateful at the same time. 40-foot ceilings, a chandelier the size of a small aircraft, pale stone floors that reflected light like a frozen lake, everything deliberate, everything expensive. Nolan Pierce was 41, dressed in a charcoal quarter-zip pullover, dark slacks, and low-profile running shoes. He carried no briefcase. He wore no watch anyone would recognize from across a room. His only luggage was the same weathered leather duffel he had carried since his first investor meeting 12 years ago, when he had flown coach and eaten airport sandwiches for dinner and told himself that one day he would not have to explain himself to anyone. He was still explaining himself. "Sir, can I help you find something?" The man behind the desk was named Derek Solis, 29 years old, 3 months into his role as front desk associate at the Hargrove Grand in downtown Atlanta. He had the posture of someone trained to appear helpful and the eyes of someone trained to assess. He looked at Nolan the way a customs officer looks at a passport, not reading it so much as deciding whether to believe it. Nolan set his duffel on the floor beside him and approached the counter. "Checking in," he said. "Pierce." Derek's fingers moved to the keyboard. His expression did not change, but something shifted behind his eyes, slight, practiced, the kind of adjustment people make when reality does not match expectation. "First name?" "Nolan." Derek typed slowly. Then he stopped, looked at the screen, tipped again. Then he leaned forward almost imperceptibly and said, "I'm not finding that reservation." Nolan studied him. "Try the corporate account, Pierce Capital Holdings." Derek's jaw tightened almost invisibly. He typed. He waited. He looked at the screen for a long time. "Sir, I'm showing a reservation under that name, but..." He paused. "It appears to be for the founder's suite. That must be a system error." "It is not a system error," Nolan said. "I understand. But the founder's suite is our premier accommodation. It's typically reserved for..." Derek glanced up once. "For guests with a particular relationship to the property." Nolan waited. He had learned to let silence do the work that arguments could not. "Our director of accommodations would need to verify this before I can process your check-in," Derek said. A woman to Nolan's left, checking in for a standard room, had her key cards in hand in under 90 seconds. She glanced at Nolan briefly, then away. "Call your director," Nolan said. Derek reached for the desk phone slowly, as though hoping the problem would resolve itself before he had to involve anyone else. It did not. Have you ever paid for something in full, prepared everything in advance, done every single thing correctly, and still been made to stand at a counter like a man awaiting judgment? That is not confusion. That is a decision. It just gets dressed up in paperwork. The Hargrove Grand had opened 14 months ago. 42 floors, 3 restaurants, a rooftop terrace that looked out over downtown Atlanta like a promontory, 8,000 square feet of event space, 61 luxury suites on floors 20 through 38, and on the top floor, the founder's suite, 2 bedrooms, a private terrace, a kitchen, a dining room, and floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the city into a painting. The suite was booked for 3 nights under the name Nolan Pierce. What Derek Solis did not know, and what the Hargrove Grand's director of accommodations, a woman named Patricia Yuen, was about to learn, was that the reservation had not been made through the hotel's public booking system. It had been made through the hotel's ownership network. Patricia Yuen, 46, arrived from somewhere behind the lobby with the brisk walk of a person who has managed crises quietly for 2 decades. She wore a dark blazer over a white blouse, her hair pulled back neatly, an earpiece hanging at her collar. She extended her hand toward Derek first, not toward Nolan. She had been briefed by phone. 30 seconds of briefing, which was 30 seconds too little. "Mr. Pierce," she said, turning to him. Her smile was the kind that cost something to maintain. "I apologize for the wait. There seems to be a bit of confusion with the reservation." "There's no confusion on my end," Nolan said. Patricia's smile held. "Of course not. I just need to verify a few things before we get you settled. The founder's suite has a particular check-in protocol." "What protocol?" She glanced at Derek. He looked at his keyboard. "Our standard practice for premium suites," she said smoothly, "is to confirm the reservation with the coordinating account executive. It's a courtesy step. Really, just to make sure everything is aligned." "My reservation was confirmed 4 days ago," Nolan said. "I received a confirmation number. Would you like it?" Patricia's mouth opened. "That would be helpful, yes." He recited it without looking at his phone. 12 digits. No hesitation. Derek entered it. The screen changed. Something crossed his face quick as a door closing. "The reservation is confirmed," he said. His voice had flattened. Patricia leaned in to look at the screen herself. Her smile thinned slightly around the edges. "Wonderful," she said. "And the name on the coordinating corporate account is Pierce Capital Holdings," Nolan said. "Majority stakeholder account." The air in the lobby did not change temperature, but something shifted. Small and irreversible, the way a key turning in a lock shifts the entire architecture of a door. Patricia straightened. "I'll just need 1 moment to reach our general manager." "You can reach your general manager," Nolan said. "Or you can process my check-in." "The suite is confirmed. My name is on the reservation. The confirmation number is valid. What else do you need?" Patricia's composure was excellent. That was her gift and her limit. She was very good at appearing calm while deciding which direction to fall. "Mr. Pierce, I want to make sure your experience begins on the right note. If you'd like to wait in our lounge." "I've been standing since I walked through that door," Nolan said. "I don't need a lounge. I need my key." Behind him, 3 other guests had filtered into the lobby. A couple in their 50s, dressed for dinner. A younger man in a blazer with a roller bag. They slowed instinctively, reading the air the way people do when they sense something happening, but aren't sure what. Patricia lowered her voice. "Mr. Pierce, I don't want to make this uncomfortable." Nolan looked at her steadily. "You didn't make it comfortable to begin with." Her composure cracked at one corner. Not visibly, but the breath she took was a half-second longer than the one before it. From the far end of the lobby, a door opened. A man in a charcoal suit came through it with the unhurried step of someone accustomed to being the final word. His name tag read Victor Hale, General Manager. He was 54, broad through the shoulders, with silver-gray hair trimmed close, and the careful eyes of someone who had spent 3 decades reading rooms. He looked at Patricia first, then at Derek, then at Nolan, and then, because he had been in this business long enough to know when something had gone wrong before anyone admitted it, he walked directly to the desk. "Good evening," he said. "I'm Victor Hale. I'm the general manager here." He extended his hand to Nolan. "What can I do for you?" Nolan shook it. "Process my check-in." Victor's eyes moved to Derek. "What seems to be the proper answer?" Patricia cut in. "We were in the process of verifying the reservation. The founder's suite. My name is on the reservation," Nolan said. "The confirmation number is valid. Your front desk associate confirmed it himself 2 minutes ago." Victor looked at Derek. The look was not aggressive. It was the quiet, weighted look of a man who understood exactly what it meant. "Is that correct?" Derek swallowed. "Yes, sir." Victor's jaw set. He looked at Patricia. He looked at the lobby, the couple who had paused near the entrance. The young man with the roller bag now pretending to check his phone, the lobby attendant near the elevator bank who had found something very interesting about the floor. "Mr. Pierce," Victor said carefully, "I want to personally apologize for the delay. There was no reason this should have taken more than 2 minutes." He turned to Derek. "Process Mr. Pierce's check-in. Founder's Suite now. Derek's fingers moved over the keyboard. This time, they did not pause. Patricia stood with her hands folded, her smile repacked and reapplied. She turned to Nolan. "We're so sorry for any inconvenience. If there's anything we can do to make your arrival more comfortable, you can explain to me," Nolan said, his voice the same temperature it had been since he walked through the door. What exactly needed to be verified that a confirmed reservation and a matching name and a confirmation number did not already provide? The lobby was quiet. Not silent. The chandelier hummed. The climate system breathed. But every person within range had gone very still in the way people go still when they know they are witnessing something true. Patricia opened her mouth. "Take your time," Nolan said. She closed it. Victor Hale looked at the desk. Then he looked at Nolan with the expression of a man arriving late to a scene he understood too well. "There is no good answer to that question," he said. It was the most honest thing anyone had said since Nolan walked through the door. Derek slid the key cards across the marble counter, 2 of them tucked inside a small branded envelope. His eyes did not meet Nolan's. "Your suite is on the 42nd floor," Derek said. "The elevator on the left requires the key card for access." Nolan picked up the envelope. He did not move yet. "I want to understand something," he said. He was not speaking only to Derek. He was speaking to the lobby, to the air, to the practiced efficiency of a system that had just tried to route him around his own reservation. "When another guest checks in, do you verify their account with a phone call to your general manager?" Derek did not answer. "Patricia," Nolan said. She straightened. "Every guest is important to us, Mr. Pierce. That's not what I asked." The couple near the entrance had not moved. The woman had her hand on her husband's arm. The young man with the roller bag had put his phone entirely in his pocket. Victor Hale answered. "No," he said flatly. "We do not." The word landed like something being set down. "Heavy," Nolan nodded once. He picked up his duffel. He looked at Victor. "Who owns this property?" he asked. Victor blinked. The question did not fit the conversation he expected. "The Hargrove Group. They're a hospitality investment firm based in—" "I know where they're based," Nolan said. "I asked who owns the property." Victor stopped. Patricia looked at him. Something behind her eyes rearranged itself slowly, the way furniture looks different after the lights come on in a dark room. "The Hargrove Group," Victor repeated, but with less certainty. Nolan reached into the front pocket of his duffel and removed a slim card holder. He opened it without hurry. He did not make it a performance. He simply placed a card on the marble counter the way a person places down something that has always been true. Victor Hale picked it up. The card read, "Nolan Pierce, Founder and Chief Executive Officer. Pierce Capital Holdings." Beneath that, in smaller print, "Principal Investor, the Hargrove Group Hospitality Portfolio." Victor read it twice. His face did not collapse. It reorganized. Patricia reached the same understanding a half-second later. The color in her face shifted the way light shifts when a cloud passes over it. Gone, then different. Derek was still looking at his keyboard, but his hands had stopped moving. "Mr. Pierce," Victor said. His voice had changed. Not groveling. Too experienced for that, but recalibrated. The way a compass finds north after someone stops shaking it. "I owe you a more significant apology than I've already offered." "Yes," Nolan said simply. "You do." Outside the lobby windows, Atlanta moved through its evening. Tie lights and street lamps. A couple walking a dog past the valet stand. A food delivery cyclist threading between stopped cars. The city did not care what had just happened inside the Hargrove Grand. It never did. But inside, the lobby had changed shape. Not the architecture. The geography of who stood where and why and what it meant. Victor Hale set the card down carefully. "Pierce Capital Holdings holds equity in this property. Controlling equity," Nolan said. "Since the Series B round, 18 months ago." Patricia's mouth pressed into a tight, bloodless line. "Derek," Victor said, not looking away from Nolan, Please note this interaction in the guest incident log. Derek's head came up. Sir, every detail, time of arrival, length of delay. Reason given for the delay, all of it. Derek looked at Patricia. She gave him nothing. He looked back at Victor. Yes, sir, he said, and began to type. Patricia stepped forward. Her voice had shed its hotel lobby smoothness. What remained was something more human, which made it worse. Mr. Pierce, I want you to know that what happened tonight was not intentional. Nolan looked at her, not unkindly, but with the steady, patient look of someone who has heard that sentence in every configuration it comes in. The intention doesn't change what happened, he said. You saw me walk in, and you decided something before I opened my mouth. When the reservation confirmed, you looked for another reason to slow it down. That is not a system error. That is a judgment error, and it has a cost. Patricia's eyes held steady, but barely. What kind of cost? Victor asked. His voice was controlled, but the question was real. Nolan's phone buzzed against his palm. He looked at it briefly. A message from his chief of staff. Board call in 30. They're waiting on your signal. He slid the phone into his pocket. The Hargrove Group is scheduled to present a portfolio review to our investment committee in 11 days, Nolan said. We are in the process of deciding whether to extend the management contract for this property for another cycle. The lobby's ambient sound continued unchanged. Somewhere behind the desk, a phone rang twice and stopped. Victor Hale said nothing. He had stopped being a general manager and started being a man standing at the edge of a consequence he had not yet measured. I was not supposed to be here this week, Nolan continued. I came early to do a quiet walkthrough before the review, to see the property without announcement, to understand how it runs when no one is performing for an audience. He looked around the lobby, slowly. At the marble, at the chandelier, at the marble, at the pristine surfaces and the practiced elegance. I've been here 12 minutes. Patricia closed her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, the performance was completely gone. Victor turned to her. His voice was quiet. Patricia, I need you to document your role in this interaction and submit it to HR tonight. Her chin lifted slightly. Of course. He turned to Derek. Same for you. Full account. Submit before end of shift. Derek looked young suddenly. Very young. He nodded. From the far side of the lobby, a man approached quietly. Late 30s, a lanyard around his neck, a tablet in his hand. He had the particular walk of someone who had been hovering at a discreet distance and had now been gestured forward. James, Victor said, please escort Mr. Pierce to the founder's suite and ensure everything is in order. James, the head of concierge services, gave Nolan a small, professional nod. Mr. Pierce, whenever you're ready. Nolan looked at Victor one more time. The board call is in 28 minutes. After that, I'll be available for a conversation with whoever the Hargrove Group wants to send. Victor nodded slowly. I'll notify them immediately. Tell them to bring someone with authority to make decisions, Nolan said. Not someone with authority to apologize. Victor absorbed that. He had been in this business for 30 years. He had navigated difficult guests and difficult ownership relationships and difficult staff. But he understood, standing at the desk of the Hargrove Grand on an ordinary Tuesday evening, that he had not managed a difficult situation tonight. He had failed, a straightforward one. The elevator required the key card, as Derek had said. James pressed it against the panel and the doors opened immediately. Inside, the cab was paneled in warm wood, lit from above by soft recessed light. A small screen above the button panel displayed a welcome message that had been programmed before Nolan ever arrived. Welcome to the Hargrove Grand. We hope your stay exceeds every expectation. Nolan looked at it for a moment. Then he looked straight ahead as the doors closed. James stood beside him with the careful silence of a man who understood that some moments require nothing from him except his presence. The elevator climbed. When the doors opened on the 42nd floor, The hallway was empty and quiet in the way expensive places go quiet. Not absence of sound, but presence of effort, every surface calibrated, every light considered, a hallway that existed to make the person walking through it feel that they had arrived somewhere. The suite door was already coded to Nolan's key card. He opened it himself. The room was exactly what he had been told it would be. The city spread beneath the windows like a grid of amber and white, the skyline low and wide and real. A dining table for 8. A kitchen that looked used even though it wasn't. 2 bedrooms down a hallway. And a terrace behind sliding glass doors that extended over the Atlanta night. James set the duffel on the luggage rack without being asked. "Mr. Pierce, can I get you anything before your call?" "Water," Nolan said. "Still, of course." Nolan moved to the window. Below him, 42 floors down, the front entrance of the Hargrove Grand stood illuminated. He could see the valet stand, the revolving door, the street beyond it. He had walked through that door 22 minutes ago. He thought about that, not with anger. He had long since learned that anger was the most expensive emotion a person could carry, and the least useful. It burned fuel you needed later. It narrowed vision at exactly the moment when vision was the only tool that mattered. He thought instead about the first hotel he had ever stayed in on a business trip. He was 26. He had taken a red-eye from Baltimore, arrived with a paper confirmation printout, because he hadn't trusted the app yet, and stood at the desk of a mid-priced chain near the convention center, while a front desk attendant told him his reservation was not in the system, and the hotel was full, and there was nothing she could do. He had stood there for 19 minutes before a supervisor overrode it and found the reservation exactly where it should have been. He had driven for Uber that weekend to cover the cost of the replacement hotel, because the first one had already charged his card. That was 15 years ago. He was still explaining himself. His phone buzzed. Board call. He sat down at the dining table, opened his laptop, and joined the meeting. They were waiting for him. 6 faces on the screen. His board chair, Evelyn Marsh, appeared first, silver-haired, reading glasses perched low, a legal pad visible at the edge of her frame. "Nolan," she said. "We were starting to wonder." "I had a delay," he said. "I'll tell you about it after." "Before," she said, "because apparently the Hargrove Group just called our investor relations line, asking whether there was a problem with the management contract." Nolan leaned back in his chair. Outside the window, the Atlanta skyline held perfectly still. "Then they already know," he said. "What exactly do they know?" "That their flagship property delayed a confirmed check-in for 20+ minutes," Nolan said. "Attempted to direct me to the general manager for verification, and offered no coherent explanation for why my reservation required scrutiny that no other guest's reservation would have received." The board absorbed that. Evelyn wrote something on her legal pad. "Were you the only one who experienced this tonight?" she asked. The question was precise. "I was the only one I know of," Nolan said. "But I wasn't there to audit. I was there to sleep." A board member named Curtis, who oversaw the hospitality portfolio, unmuted himself. "The Hargrove Group's management contract is up for renewal in 60 days. We were planning to extend." "I know," Nolan said. "Are you recommending we revisit that?" Nolan looked at the city outside the window, 42 floors. A chandelier the size of a small aircraft, a marble lobby and a key card, and a front desk associate who had typed very slowly while deciding whether a man who built a company from a red-eye flight and a paper printout belonged in the room he had paid for. "I'm recommending we ask the right questions before we sign," Nolan said. "How does this property treat guests when ownership isn't watching? What does the incident data look like across guest profiles? What is the training protocol when a staff member exercises judgment that contradicts documented fact?" He paused. "And I'm recommending we make those questions part of the renewal terms, not suggestions. Requirements." Evelyn looked at him over the edge of her reading glasses. You're turning your hotel stay into a compliance framework. Somebody should, Nolan said. Quiet on the call, the kind of quiet that is not empty but full of people calculating. Curtis said, "That's going to make for an uncomfortable conversation with the Hargrove Group." "They already called your investor relations line tonight," Nolan said. "The conversation is already uncomfortable. The only question is whether it produces something useful." The call lasted 40 minutes. At the end of it, Evelyn had 3 action items. Curtis had drafted a summary for the legal team, and the Hargrove Group's management contract review had been moved from the regular agenda to a special session with expanded scope. Nolan closed his laptop. James had left a tray on the sideboard, still water, a small dish of almonds, a card from the hotel's culinary team offering a late dinner at whatever hour suited him. At the bottom of the card in Victor Hale's handwriting, "I will be available personally at any hour tonight." "I am sorry this evening," began the way it did. VH Nolan read it, set it down, picked up his water. He walked to the terrace door and opened it. The night air over Atlanta was warm and carried the low murmur of the city below. Engines and wind, and the sound of a place being itself without caring whether anyone was watching. He stood there for a while. He was not thinking about the board call. He was not thinking about the management contract or the compliance framework or the Hargrove Group's investor relations line. He was thinking about Derek Solis, 29 years old, 3 months into a job he probably needed, who had looked at a man in a quarter-zip pullover and made a decision that felt safe and turned out to be the most costly one he had made since he got hired. He was thinking about Patricia Ewan, who had managed crises for 20 years and understood how to smooth things over and had applied that skill in exactly the wrong direction. He was thinking about the couple near the entrance who had watched and said nothing. He thought about what it meant that he had the terrace and the skyline and the board call, that he had the card and the confirmation number and the equity stake, that when the truth came out, it came out dressed in all of that, and people had the grace to be sorry. He wondered, what would have happened if he had come through that door with only a reservation? He already knew the answer. He had known it for 15 years. The city below did not offer an answer. Cities never do. They only show you what people build when they think no one is watching. And what gets built, in the long run, tells you everything about who they believed was worth building it for. Nolan Pierce finished his water, went back inside, closed the terrace door. He sat in the chair by the window and opened his email and began to read through the acquisition notes he had meant to review on the plane. Outside, Atlanta kept moving, indifferent and ongoing and exactly itself. In the morning, Victor Hale would be in the lobby when Nolan stepped off the elevator. The Hargrove Group's regional director would arrive by 10, with a formal letter and a revised proposal, and 2 very junior attorneys. Patricia Ewan would submit her incident report and request a transfer before noon. Derek Solis would come in for his shift, sit down at the desk, and find a note from HR asking him to come by the office. Before he started, and somewhere in the quiet architecture of the Hargrove Grand's ownership records, the name Nolan Pierce would remain exactly where it had always been. It had never been hidden. It had never been a secret. It had simply been ignored by people who decided, in the span of a glance, that the man walking toward the desk with a weathered leather duffel and a quarter-zip pullover was not the kind of man whose name belonged at the top of anything. They were wrong, not because of the equity stake, not because of the board call or the business card or the investment portfolio. They were wrong because they had a reservation in front of them with a name on it, and they chose to doubt the name before they doubted themselves. That is the oldest mistake there is, and it does not get cheaper with repetition.